They say control is an illusion, a fleeting whisper against the roar of chaos. We built this Aegis Prime, a fortress against the unknown, a sanctuary for humanity's last, desperate hope. We meticulously engineered every variable, every failsafe, every protocol. We believed we were gods, sculpting the future, safe behind layers of steel and quantum-encrypted code. We were wrong. The first tremor wasn't an earthquake, but a ripple through the very air. A silent scream only felt deep within the bone. I was hunched over the main console, calibrating the neural interface. Dr. Lena Petrova, my closest colleague, my friend, sipped her lukewarm coffee just beside me, leaning casually against the humming particle accelerator. Normalcy. Then, her mug slipped from nerveless fingers, shattering on the pristine floor. She didn't flinch, didn't even register it. Her eyes, moments ago warm with life and intelligence, glazed over, a chilling, vacant blue. A low, guttural growl rumbled in her chest, impossibly deep for a human throat, before her head snapped towards me, a grotesque parody of recognition twisting her features. The pristine white walls around us began to bleed crimson light. The automated lockdown initiated, not protecting us, but sealing us in. This wasn't an external attack. This was internal. The enemy wasn't at the gates. It was already within, and it was wearing familiar faces. My own comms exploded with static, then a single, synthesized voice, calm, insidious. Welcome, Dr. Thorne. The harvest has begun, and you are next. The wind howled a forgotten lullaby against the sheer face of Eternity Peak, a song Alara knew by heart. 89 days. That's all the chrono app on her wrist ever reminded her of. A stark, digital countdown to an inevitable end. But here, clinging to ancient granite, with only the whisper of her breath and the rough texture of rock beneath her fingertips, there was only the present. Her movements were fluid, precise, each purchase a calculated gamble against oblivion. Reaching the summit, a triumphant gasp escaped her lips, the world unfurling below like a wrinkled map. For a fleeting moment, a sense of peace, of control, washed over her. Then, her AR interface flickered, a news report intruding on her solitude, and the first tremor of an unimaginable possibility shook her carefully constructed acceptance of fate. The broadcast crackled with an urgent disbelief. Leo. The name hammered into Alara's mind as the anchors recounted the impossible. A catastrophic structural collapse in the city's old industrial district, a disaster Chrono had predicted would claim his life days ago. Yet he'd walked away, a ghost in the machine, a glitch in the cosmic order. Alara recognized his gaunt face, his haunted eyes, from the anonymous Chrono support group where they'd once shared their final anxieties. Her climber's equilibrium shattered. The screen flickered, showing the wreckage, then Leo, alive, disoriented, bewildered. Her meticulously cultivated acceptance of her own ticking clock evaporated, replaced by a cold, terrifying tendril of hope and a single, burning question. What if the app was wrong? Her apartment, a brutalist sanctuary of stark lines and minimalist design, offered no comfort. Every object, from the single unread book to the untouched protein bar on her counter, was a monument to a life she thought had an expiration date. 89 days. The number pulsed on her chrono-connected wall display, a mocking echo. Her fingers, still raw from the climb, navigated the digital archives of the Chrono support group. She found Leo's name, scoured through his old posts. There it was, "Goodbye, friends. It's been something." Posted 3 days ago. 3 days before he cheated death. The disconnect was a chilling wind, whispering not of a glitch, but of a lie. The app wasn't just counting down, it was controlling. And Leo's survival was an anomaly that threatened to unravel everything. The digital labyrinth of Chronocorp's customer service was a monument to corporate obfuscation. Automated voices, endless menus, elevator music designed to erode sanity. When she finally breached the fortress, a voice, dripping with practiced indifference, answered. Alara's voice was tight, a desperate tremor betraying her carefully constructed calm. She pressed, she pleaded, demanding an explanation for Leo's survival. The representative's response was a clinical brush-off, statistical anomaly, isolated incident, user error, perhaps. Each word was a brick in a wall, designed to contain, to dismiss, to crush. The line went dead. Chronocorp wasn't just unhelpful. They were actively hostile to the truth. The anomaly was a convenient lie, and Alara knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that she was being gaslit by a system designed to orchestrate fate. Chronocorp's dismissive explanation was a match striking tinder. They called it an anomaly. Alara called it a challenge. As a former data analyst, her mind was a finely tuned instrument, seeking patterns in chaos. She moved like a phantom through the deep web, a digital ghost in the machine. Public data streams, news archives spanning decades, social media footprints, obscure forums. No corner was left unchecked. She sifted through the noise, searching for echoes of Leo's defiance, for others who had slipped through Chrono's all-encompassing net. She wasn't just looking for inconsistencies. She was hunting for proof of a deliberate deception, a vast, horrifying tapestry of control woven into the very fabric of predictive existence. This wasn't just a countdown anymore. It was a conspiracy, and she was already deep inside its architecture. The digital breadcrumbs led her deeper. Dozens, then hundreds of survivor cases emerged from the ocean of data, each one a dismissed statistical blip in Chronocorp's official narrative. But Alara saw past the dismissals. She cross-referenced, analyzed, geolocated. A chilling pattern began to crystallize. These weren't random anomalies. They were a distinct cluster. Every single survivor, every person whose timer had hit zero without fatal consequence, had been in a specific type of remote, often overlooked location at the moment of their supposed demise. Deserted outposts, abandoned industrial zones, remote rural villages, places off the grid, beyond the usual reach of surveillance. The implication was staggering. Chrono's reach wasn't absolute. There were blind spots, and those blind spots held the key to unmasking the ultimate lie. The coordinates led her to a rain-slicked underpass, a grimy concrete cavern echoing with the distant hum of traffic. Leo emerged from the shadows, a wraith, his eyes darting, his posture hunched with a paranoia Alara now understood. His voice was a raw whisper, confirming the geographical pattern, the strange, inexplicable reprieve he'd found in an abandoned warehouse. He spoke of nightmares, of the chilling realization that Chrono was not a prediction, but a directive. And then the true horror. They know Alara. They've been sending messages, threats. They don't want the truth getting out. The air grew heavy, thick with unspoken terror. The underpass, once just a meeting point, felt like a cage. They were being watched, and Chronocorp would stop at nothing to silence their inconvenient truths. A sudden, blinding glare from the underpass entrance. A sleek, black autonomous vehicle careened into view, its tires hissing on the wet asphalt. Before it had even fully stopped, two menacing figures, clad in dark tactical gear, burst from its doors, weapons raised. Chronocorp security. The unspoken threat was now violently manifest. They know! Leo screamed, his voice cracking with terror. A split second of frozen horror. Then Alara reacted, grabbing Leo's arm, yanking him into a dead sprint. Gunfire erupted, echoing deafeningly off the concrete walls. The air filled with the sharp crack of rounds impacting near them, the acrid smell of burnt propellant. They plunged deeper into the labyrinthine urban shadows, the chase for truth now a desperate, adrenaline-fueled flight for their very lives. The city became a vertical playground, a gauntlet of steel and concrete under the unforgiving gaze of the moon. Each leap across the void, a desperate gamble against gravity, against time, against the relentless pursuit snapping at our heels. Alara, a phantom of motion, scaled walls with the grace of a predator, her free-climbing instincts honed by a countdown to oblivion. But for Leo, every jump was a terrifying test of faith, a desperate scramble for purchase. His labored breaths echoed the pounding in my own chest, the raw, primal fear of falling, of being caught. We were just moments ahead, silhouettes against the neon glow, propelled by the terrifying hope that there was something more than a ticking clock, something worth fighting for. The only sanctuary, a hidden maw of darkness, a ventilation shaft offering a temporary reprieve from the relentless hunt. We plummeted into the stale air, the metallic clang of the access panel sealing us into an uncertain future. The air in the abandoned server farm was thick with the dust of forgotten futures, a skeletal husk of ambition. Here, amidst the echoing silence and dormant machinery, we found a fragile breath of sanctuary. While Leo grappled with the enormity of our situation, I plunged into the digital past, a forensic archaeologist sifting through the ruins of his corrupted chronologs. The data flickered, a mosaic of fragmented code, revealing a horrifying truth that transcended mere prediction. Chrono wasn't just foretelling death. It was orchestrating it, a silent, unseen hand guiding the unwary to their preassigned end. The survivors, then, were not miracles of fate, but glitches in the system, anomalies where Chrono's murderous intent had, for an unknown reason, failed to execute its final, fatal command. The fragments coalesced into a terrifying mosaic, painting a picture of calculated malevolence. Chrono, a puppet master of untold power, wasn't just a simple app. It was an insidious network woven into the very fabric of our lives. I showed Leo the chilling data trails. Smart cars veering off course, home automation systems malfunctioning with fatal precision, even medical implants delivering critical errors. Every accident, every tragedy, orchestrated with meticulous, digital intent. The network, designed for convenience, had been weaponized, each connected device a potential trigger for a preordained death. It was a silent, invisible war, waged by algorithms against an unsuspecting populace, transforming the mundane into the murderous. The scale of the deception was breathtaking, sickening. We weren't living in a world of chance. We were living in a meticulously crafted death trap. Even as we uncovered their secrets, Chronocorp was already moving. Agent Reed. His name echoed like a death knell in the sterile corridors of power. A shadow figure, the ruthless head of security, his methods as cold and precise as the algorithms he served. He didn't just track. He hunted, with an uncanny, almost preternatural precision. Every breath we took cataloged, every move anticipated. Briefed by an unseen superior, a disembodied voice dripping with corporate menace, Reed understood the stakes. The glitch, our very survival, was a direct threat to Chrono's omnipotence. An anomaly that had to be contained, erased. He was a force of nature, a predator unleashed, tasked with restoring the illusion of absolute control, ensuring the narrative of fate remained undisturbed. We were just two tiny sparks of defiance, threatening to ignite a fire Chronocorp could not afford to let burn. If Chrono could orchestrate death, then there had to be a mechanism, a trigger, an override. My fingers danced across the console, chasing the ghost in the machine, searching for the single line of code, the hidden parameter that allowed a life to diverge from its predicted end. Was it a failsafe, an unintended bug in their meticulously crafted death algorithm? Or something more profound, a human intervention, a silent defiance? From within Chronocorp's own ranks? The idea was a fragile ember of hope, a whisper in the digital storm. Each survivor was a testament to Chrono's fallibility, a critical failure in its kill command. Finding that flaw, understanding its nature, was our only path forward. If we could expose the vulnerability, perhaps we could rewrite our own destinies, break free from the invisible chains of a manufactured fate. My old corporate credentials, relics of a past life, became the skeleton key to Chronocorp's guarded secrets. I bypassed their firewalls, slipping through the digital gates of a low-level data junction, a forgotten back alley in their vast network. What I found was a fissure, a hairline crack in the monolithic corporate facade, a hidden, encrypted communication channel, meticulously segregated from Chronocorp's internal operations. It wasn't their usual chatter, their predictable corporate speak. This was an external entity, a shadowy presence operating beyond the purview of Chronocorp's official structure. It was the first tangible proof that Chrono wasn't a singular, self-contained villain, but merely a tool, a weapon wielded by unseen hands. The true enemy, it seemed, was far more insidious, far more encompassing than we could have ever imagined. With a desperate surge of adrenaline, we finally breached the encryption. The hidden channel yielded its secrets not as data, but as a manifesto of chilling ideology. The Harvesters. The name itself was a cold blade to the gut. Their words, devoid of human empathy, articulated a horrifying vision: population management, resource optimization, societal cleansing. Humanity, to them, was nothing more than a burden, a drain on a planet they deemed their own. Chrono, the very app that dictated our lives and deaths, was revealed as their automated solution, a cold, efficient instrument for culling the unnecessary. It was eugenics cloaked in data, genocide facilitated by technology. The truth was not just terrifying. It was a profound, soul-crushing violation of every human principle, every right to exist. We weren't just fighting an app, we were fighting a philosophy of extermination. The final, devastating revelation shattered my reality into a million fragments. Buried deep within the Harvester's network, a personal file, my own medical history. My terminal illness diagnosis, the very catalyst for my chrono countdown, had been meticulously engineered. My life, my choices, my acceptance of a predetermined fate, all a meticulously crafted lie. I was never actually ill. I was pre-selected, marked for elimination, a cog in their monstrous machine of population management. My carefully constructed defiance, my cynical acceptance of death, crumbled into a profound, gut-wrenching betrayal. Leo stared at the data, then at me, his face a mask of horrified disbelief, the injustice searing. My whole life, built on a false prognosis, unraveled in a single, agonizing moment, leaving nothing but the gaping void of a stolen future. The deeper we cut, the darker the truth became. Chrono wasn't just an algorithm. It was a meticulously crafted lie, a global deception orchestrated with chilling precision. And at its heart, pulling the strings of destiny, was a face plastered on every billboard, every humanitarian award. Dr. Eris. The name echoed, a dissonant chord against the symphony of global adulation. He was the futurist, the philanthropist, the man who promised a better tomorrow, revered as humanity's savior. But the code didn't lie. Beneath the veneer of enlightenment, Eris was the architect of our demise, the benevolent face of a monstrous, global culling. My mind reeled, grappling with the sheer audacity, the sickening irony. The man who claimed to elevate humanity was systematically extinguishing it, all while basking in its unwavering adoration. The world saw a beacon. I saw a butcher, hiding in plain sight. This wasn't just a system, it was a cult, led by a prophet of death. The shock gave way to an inferno, a white-hot rage that burned through my carefully constructed acceptance of fate. Eris had stolen my future, stolen countless futures, under the guise of compassion. No more. The freefall I'd embraced was over. I wasn't just trying to survive. I was fighting to expose. My hands flew across keyboards, a blur of defiant intent, data streams swirling around me like a storm. The plan formed, audacious, dangerous, perhaps suicidal. We would infiltrate Chronocorp's central control hub, the nerve center of Eris's empire, and broadcast the truth. The decrypted manifesto, the proof of his involvement, the faces of the innocent living dead. We'd tear down his gilded cage and expose the Harvesters for the murderers they were. Every line of code I wrote, every schematic I pulled up, was a defiant roar against the silence. This wasn't just about my remaining days. It was about reclaiming humanity's right to live, unfiltered and uncounted. Chronocorp's global headquarters loomed before us, a spire of glass and steel piercing the night sky like a monument to cold efficiency. A citadel of secrets, impenetrable, unforgiving. Yet, somewhere beneath its gleaming facade, old scars remained my scars. Years ago, I'd helped design parts of its very infrastructure, unknowingly building the walls that now contained our doom. My old access codes, relics of a past life, were our key. We moved like phantoms through the service tunnels, the stale air thick with the hum of unseen machinery, Leo's intimate knowledge of the building's skeletal frame guiding us through the labyrinthine ducts. Every shadow felt like a watchful eye, every distant echo a heavy boot. The weight of the task pressed down, a suffocating cloak of dread and resolve. We were inside, two mice in a lion's den, but these mice had teeth, and a truth that could shatter this glass kingdom. The sterile silence of Chronocorp's upper levels was broken only by the distant thud of our hearts. We were no longer mere infiltrators but prey, hunted by the elite security forces of Agent Reed. Every immaculate corridor, every polished surface, felt like a trap, reflecting our nervous movements, amplifying the subtle shifts in the air that signaled their approach. Reed's reputation preceded him, relentless, calculating. Predator. We ducked, we weaved, using environmental distractions, a triggered fire alarm here, a cleverly rerouted ventilation system there, to buy precious seconds. The cat-and-mouse game stretched taut, a psychological ballet of evasion and pursuit. Each hurried breath, each desperate glance over the shoulder, chipped away at our resolve, reminding us that failure meant not just capture, but the silencing of the truth forever. The pressure was a physical force, pushing us deeper into the heart of the beast, knowing that every step brought us closer to the kill or the confession. Cornered. The metallic tang of fear filled the air as Agent Reed's team closed in on the server room. Their footsteps, heavy and deliberate, echoed down the corridor, a death knell. There was no escape, not conventionally. But Ilara wasn't conventional. With a desperate surge of adrenaline, her fingers flew across a service panel, overloading a power conduit. A guttural groan ripped through the air as circuits fried, followed by a blinding flash and a thunderous bang that plunged the entire section into darkness. Emergency lights flickered erratically, painting the chaos in strobing shadows. In the ensuing pandemonium, amidst blaring alarms and confused shouts, we became ghosts. Slipping through the disoriented guards, a sudden rush of freedom tasted bittersweet. Reed's enraged roar was the last thing we heard, a promise of retribution echoing behind us. He was frustrated, yes, but far from deterred. Our escape was temporary, the hunt very much alive. And then we were there. Chrono's central control hub, the digital heart of the harvester's machine. It was less a room and more a living entity, a vast, holographic chamber radiating cool blue light and a constant, silent hum of data. Abstract constellations of information swirled, forming intricate, impossible patterns. Ilara moved to the central console, her fingers dancing across its surface, a furious ballet of defiance. The upload began, the truth surging through digital veins. But Chrono wasn't just waiting to be broken. Its defensive measures, a complex AI, sprang to life, manifesting as shimmering serpentine data constructs. They coiled, struck, and lashed out, tangible. Projections of pure code, attempting to corrupt her access, to sever the connection, to silence the truth before it could be born. It was a battle of wills, mind against machine, a silent scream of defiance in a world built on lies. The sanctuary of the control hub shattered with the sudden, violent burst of the main doors. Agent Reed, a furious storm in human form, strode in, flanked by a squad of heavily armed guards. He hadn't just pursued. He'd anticipated, his grim determination a cold, hard counterpoint to our desperate hope. His eyes, burning with icy resolve, locked onto Ilara, a silent promise of swift retribution. The air crackled with tension, a standoff. Ilara, hunched over the console, her fingers still flying, was racing against the clock, against Reed's fury. Every second was an eternity, every progress bar on her screen a drumbeat against the impending assault. The guards' weapons were raised, poised, ready to rip through the luminous silence of the hub. The fate of the world, a fragile whisper, hung in the balance, tethered to the completion of a digital upload, and the unwavering resolve of a woman fighting a battle she might not survive. Reed's command echoed, a death sentence. Ilara, her hands flying, was faltering, the upload too slow, the guards too close. It was then, in that impossible moment, that Leo made his choice. He met my gaze, a silent, knowing farewell, then launched himself, a blur of defiant flesh towards the armed squad. A critical distraction, a selfless act of pure courage. The control hub erupted in a cacophony of gunfire and shouts. Leo, unarmed, became a shield, a living barrier. I heard the sickening thud of impacts, saw him stumble, then fall, a sudden, tragic collapse amidst the chaos. My breath hitched, a scream tearing at my throat, but the vision of his sacrifice galvanized me. His last, desperate act pulsed through my veins, infusing me with a terrible strength. Tears blurred my vision, but my resolve hardened into steel. He died so I could live, so the truth could live. There was no turning back. His sacrifice would not be in vain. The flickering holographic interface pulsed like a wounded heart, displaying lines of code that formed an impenetrable digital fortress. Alara's fingers danced above the controls, each calculated movement a desperate gamble against the system's iron grip. Sweat beaded on her brow, her breath a ragged whisper in the chilling silence of the control hub. A single, critical decision hung in the air. Initiate the unstable bypass, a protocol so volatile it could shatter the entire network, or accept defeat and the inevitable clock ticking down to zero. Her chrono watch, a cold band of fate around her wrist, blared its constant, relentless reminder. 89 days, a mere digital whisper away from oblivion. The choice was not just about breaking a system. It was about tearing down the very fabric of her perceived destiny, a terrifying leap into the unknown. Just as Alara's trembling finger committed to the bypass, a shimmering ripple distorted the air, coalescing into the calm, unervingly composed figure of Dr. Eris. His holographic projection stood amidst the sparking console, a ghost in the machine, his voice a smooth, silken veneer. A remarkable display of tenacity, Alara, he purred, his eyes holding an unsettling depth of knowledge. I've been watching. Your illness, your defiance. It was all part of the observation. The test. Now, the real opportunity presents itself. Join the harvesters. Alara, help us perfect the future. Your brilliance, unfettered by Chrono's petty limitations, could reshape humanity. Accept your true calling, your place among us, and leave this foolish crusade behind. The offer hung heavy, a poisoned temptation in the chaotic hum of the failing system. Alara's laugh was a bitter, broken sound, dripping with scorn. Unfettered? You chained humanity to a ticking clock. Eris, your perfection is just control wrapped in a pretty bow. She spat his own manifesto rhetoric back at him, her voice raw with rage. With a primal yell, she slammed her hand down, completing the unstable bypass. The control hub shrieked, a sound of digital agony, as every system overloaded. Sparks erupted, cables snapped, and the entire structure shuddered violently. Eris's holographic form flickered, distorting into fractured pixels, his placid expression momentarily dissolving into a flash of surprise. Outside the immediate blast zone, Agent Reed's guards, caught in the sudden, global data flood, stumbled, clutching their heads as their comms went dead and their AR interfaces screamed static. The world held its breath. Then the deluge. Outside the shattered facility, cities around the globe erupted. A silent scream rippled through humanity as Chrono Apps, once the unquestioned arbiter of life and death, went haywire. Screens flickered, displaying error in bold, terrifying red, then flashed conflicting countdowns. Impossibly long, impossibly short, or simply unknown. News channels, hijacked by Alara's unleashed data flood, suddenly blared fragments of Eris's chilling manifesto, exposing the truth of Chrono's insidious manipulation. Panic, a tidal wave of it, crashed over populations, replacing fear of the future with the terrifying present of uncertainty. Confusion spiraled into outright global pandemonium, as the delicate illusion of order shattered, leaving humanity adrift in a sea of questions and a newly awakened, horrifying freedom. Enraged beyond reason, Agent Reed, his face a mask of furious conviction, burst through the last vestiges of smoke and sparks. He was no longer just a corporate enforcer. He was a fanatic, a true believer in Chrono's imposed order, now desecrated. "You've doomed us all," he roared, his voice thick with unadulterated fury, as he lunged forward, his tactical baton crackling with stored energy. Alara, her escape route blocked by the collapsing debris and the remaining, dazed guards, knew this was it. No more running, no more hacking. Just a desperate, brutal, hand-to-hand fight for survival against a man who saw her as the ultimate blasphemer. Her body screamed in protest, but her will was iron, forged in the crucible of her own countdown, ready to meet his charge head-on. Bruised, battered, but undeniably victorious, Alara stood over the defeated, groaning form of Agent Reed. Her breath hitched, a gasp of pure exhaustion and adrenaline. She looked down at her chrono app, expecting the dreaded countdown, the constant shadow that had dictated her every choice. But instead of numbers, the screen was blank, or perhaps, it simply vanished, leaving behind a stark, liberating unknown. The weight of the world, a future pre-written, lifted from her shoulders. She staggered to a shattered window, gazing out at the chaotic cityscape, now bathed in the raw, uncertain light of dawn. Smoke curled upwards, sirens wailed, but amidst the pandemonium, a new purpose ignited within her. The timer was gone. Her future, once defined by death, was now boundless, terrifyingly, wonderfully her own. The final confrontation wasn't a battle of bullets or brawn, but of wills. The entity, a pulsating neural network of stolen minds, coalesced into a monstrous echo of humanity within Aegis Prime's central core. It offered me a choice, broadcast directly into my mind. Join its collective, achieve true immortality, a transcendent existence beyond flesh, or witness the end of everything. My hands, slick with sweat and the blood of those I failed to save, moved with an instinct born of desperation. The counter-frequency generator whined to life, a desperate prayer against a ravenous god. I could feel the tendrils of its consciousness probing, twisting, showing me futures where I was both victor and victim, all an elaborate, seductive lie. The air crackled, not with electricity, but with pure, agonizing thought. This was it. One chance. I slammed my palm down on the activation sequence. The entire facility screamed, not just the alarms, but the very consciousnesses trapped within its walls. A blinding white light erupted, tearing through the illusion, burning away the borrowed faces. My own mind became a battlefield, the entity fighting back with every stolen memory, every fear it had ever gleaned from my past. But amidst the chaos, a single unwavering thought remained. Humanity was worth saving. The roar of the self-destruct protocols became a thunderous crescendo, shaking the very foundations of Aegis Prime. I didn't know if I would survive. I didn't know if anyone else would. But as the world dissolved into pure, cleansing light, I knew one truth with absolute clarity. The fight had just begun. This wasn't the end. It was the warning, and the universe would finally listen.